So Cody King is a Hall of Fame sales professional recognized for his consistency, discipline, and long-term growth in the field. With over 4 million in sales, he's a Standard of Excellence winner, breakout sales rep of the year. He is a Rolex recipient, multiple incentive trip qualifications along the way to those achievements. His personal bests include an $80,000 push, a $100,000 month, a $23,000 residential order. His journey began with Cutco in 2012 as a college sophomore, followed by several years in leadership roles before committing fully to personal sales in 2016. Since then, he has steadily elevated his performance every year, reaching nearly 600,000 in annual sales. His business is built on a balanced and highly effective approach with strong production across both booth events and service calls, with a new layer that he's been adding in with business gifts recently. Beyond his sales achievements, Cody has demonstrated exceptional financial discipline, paying off over 150,000 in student loan debt in just 3 years. His story is one of persistence and growth and commitment to raising his standard year after year. So I'm as excited as you guys are to hear Cody talk about closing big and elevating your schedule to grow the business that you want. All right, let's give him a round of applause as I turn him around. Okay, I see a few people there. Great.
Oh, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, yes.
Perfect. All right, cool. First of all, Angie, thank you so much. I was actually just saying to a coworker the other day that actually I think it was Margaret I was saying this to. I was like, it's crazy. I haven't met you, and just within the first few like text exchanges back and forth, I'm like, you just like I already like for whatever reason love you. It's crazy. So it's been a cool experience to have that. But and thank you guys for having me today. I'm excited to kind of give this message. And again, in talking with Margaret, I think this was kind of a tough message for me to kind of get behind, I guess, because typically when I give these messages, where I'm from here in Raleigh, it's to newer reps or, maybe some veteran reps that have been around a while, but I feel like this is a super high level group. And so it was kind of intimidating for me to figure out like, okay, like what can I bring to this group that might be helpful. So I figured I'd kind of do this in a different way here. So typically when I give a talk, I kind of write my talks out from start to finish, and I'm like, cool, this is what I'm going to do, and I'll say this here and this there. I kind of wanted this to be more like chill and unscripted, if that's cool with you guys. I kind of just wanted to give you a peek into my business and what's worked for me, and kind of go from there. And then hopefully, we have some time for Q&A at the end. So just to kind of bring you guys up to speed as far as my Cutco journey goes, as Angie mentioned, I started in 2012 as a sophomore in college. Probably like a lot of you, I didn't plan on doing this full time. I went to the interview. I was like, this is sick. I can sell a few knives. I grew up on a farm in Ohio, and I was like, well, sick. If I just get to, sell knives, like that's cool. I don't have to, be out milking cows and then doing all that. So I was pretty pumped about it. And I kind of bounced around a little bit my first few years. So I started in December of 2012, 2013 to 2015. I kind of took a little bit of the manager route, a little bit. I opened up a branch office. I helped run my DM's office. I became the PSM. And shortly after the PSM summer, I was kind of like, you know what? I want to sell full time. I'm, more in control of my schedule. And so that's kind of what I did. And so in 2016, I started selling full time. In 2016, I sold 80 grand that first year. And I remember that being celebrated. And my now wife used to sell Cutco, and she was like, great job on an 80K year, babe. Like, that's awesome. And I was like, it's kind of sickening when you think about it, right? And I remember that year, I probably shouldn't say this, although I will. That year I was living with some buddies, and there was many times throughout the year, like my buddy was off of work, and I'd have a day of appointments scheduled, and I was in my early 20s, and he'd call me up and be like, dude, do you want to go like drink today? and I would just cancel my day of appointments to go drink, and like it's kind of ridiculous, but that's kind of where I started selling Cutco full time. The next year, I remember I sat down and I looked at my schedule and I saw all of those times. I shouldn't say all those times. I saw those times where I canceled appointments and wasn't running things properly. And so in 2016, I got my stuff together a little bit and I sold 160 grand. 2018, I sold 260 grand. 2019, I sold 300 grand. And then in 2020, I sold 315. And I think 2020 was kind of the year that things started to make sense for me in my business, which seems like a long time. I take a little bit longer to figure things out than most people. So that was, the year that I started to kind of figure it out. And that year was really pivotal for me because it was COVID, right? And all these shows got canceled and we had no way to really work. And so I remember sitting around the house bored and I thought, you know what? I'm going to try to do these virtual sharpenings. And so I started doing virtual sharpening appointments. And I think I kind of really figured things out through doing virtual sharpenings. And then in 2021, I went from 300 grand in 2020, or sorry, 315 in 2020 to 455 in 2022. And then or sorry, 2021. And then from 21 to 22, I went from 455 to 525. 23 was 565. 24 was 592. And then last year I did 598. I know, not 600, ridiculous. But I think the big jump there was from 2020 to 2021 and 21 to 2022. I think that's where, a large jump in my business came from. And so I wanted to kind of take what happened in those 2 years and then what I'm doing now to continue that growth and hopefully grow more. And I kind of wanted to break some of those things down on this call. So kind of the path that I took for this was really like three different things, right? So the first thing I want to talk about is just investing in your business. Okay, investing time in your business, investing money in your business, just investing into your business. So that's the first thing. The second thing I want to talk about is my schedule. I think something that I have down pat for me, the way I want to live my life is my schedule. I think that's something that I actually said I was on a mentor call today, and I said, it came up like, what are you grateful for? And I said, I'm really grateful for my schedule. So I think I've got that down pretty good, at least for me. The third thing I want to talk about is skills. So I'll talk a little bit about, service calls, what I'm doing on service calls. I'll talk a little bit about some fan set stuff. I'll talk a little bit about maybe some flatware stuff or Cutco collections, just big orders. And then I'll kind of wrap things up with mindset. That's been a big thing for me over the last few years as well. So that's kind of the path that I wanted to take, if that's cool with you guys. So the first thing, as I was thinking about, like, what really made that jump in the business, the first thing that I went to was investing time into your business, right? And this is something that we're all doing. I mean, that's what you guys are doing here today, obviously. But I want to talk about like investing time into your business outside of those things. For me, and a lot of what I'll talk about today too is really for me. And I kind of hate those talks, I hate, making it all about me, but I think that's the only way I know how to do this is what worked for me. And hopefully you guys can take some things away from that. So, I remember in 2020, one of the big things that I started doing is I wanted to really get into my scripts. I wanted to nail my scripts and be able to kind of pick up a script wherever and then leave it wherever and kind of intertwine it in other scripts. And so that was a big goal of mine in 2020 was script work. And so what I would do every morning, I almost think about it as like the opposite of a miracle morning. And that sounds crazy, but I know in the Miracle Morning, they talk, if you guys have ever read that book, he talks about getting up and like doing something, kind of creating the morning that you want, right? Well, the morning that I want is I want to sit in bed with my wife. We usually sit in bed for an hour before we get up and do anything. So it's different. It's weird. I get made fun of for it all the time, but like I love a slow morning. And that's kind of a reward for me for getting up early. So one of the things I made myself do is I had to wake up at 5 o'clock every morning. I would go downstairs, I'd make coffee, and then I'd come back upstairs and I would read over my script for 30 minutes. Um, if I didn't wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, I didn't get to have my quiet morning. Let's say I woke up 30 minutes late. Well, where that 30 minutes was being shaved off of is that hour of my slow morning that I like to have watching TV with my wife and hanging out, right? And so I kind of made it a hard and fast rule that no matter what, 5 days a week, I'm getting up at 5 a.m. I'm studying scripts from 5 to 5:30. And then from 5:30 to 6:30, I get to chill, have my coffee, watch my TV show with my wife. And that really worked for me because if I didn't, like I said, if I didn't do that, then my punishment was I wouldn't get to have my morning. And that's kind of evolved, right? It's evolved into, nowadays we try to get up early. We try to get up at 4:30. We hang out. By the time I get back upstairs with coffee, it's about 4:45 to 5. We hang out until about 6, and then we go to the gym. But that schedule for me has always made sense. So I'd wake up at 5 a.m. I'd do my script work for 30 minutes and then get to chill. Once I memorized one script and was able to internalize that and do it without looking, I would then go to the next script. So for me, it started with upgrades. I was doing a lot of service calls, right? So I had to memorize the upgrade script. Then I went to cookware. And then once I memorized cookware, I went to flatware. And then it went to the transitions, right? So I had transition scripts, how to transition from like, you finish an upgrade in a service call to then how do you flow into a Cutco kitchen or how do you flow into the cookware? So I was trying to memorize every little part of that service call, or every little part of the show script. After the service calls, I memorized all of those. I then went to booth scripts, right? And I was like, okay, now I need to memorize new customer scripts. Now I need to memorize like, how to transition at the booth from, finishing a knife set to going into cookware or whatever. But I tried to think about every little part of that, what I needed to say to somebody, and I tried to have a script for that and memorize it. By the way, a quick little tip on memorizing. This was huge for me, and some of you guys may know this, some of you not. But my mentor taught me this, and this is like an amazing way to memorize. It's still how I do it today. Some of you guys may struggle with memorizing. Some of you guys may be the exact opposite of me and be like, no, it's easy. For me, it was kind of tough. So what I did is I would look at the script, I'd read it over a couple times, all right, and kind of get the gist of it. And then I would go line by line. I would read the first line over and over and over and over again. And then I would try to say it without reading it or say it without looking at it. Once I could get it word for word without looking at it, I'd then move on to the second sentence. And then I'd do the same thing on second sentence until I could say that without looking. Then I would put the two of them together. All right. Then I'd do the third one till I could do that without looking. And then I'd put the three of them together. And I would do that until I got to the end of the paragraph. Then I would memorize the paragraph altogether. And then on to the next paragraph, first line. And that for me was really, really, really important. Um, Another tip I'll give you, I didn't learn this till later in my career, but one of the things I try to do now when I get a new script and I try to memorize it, one of the things that's been really important for me is memorizing it while I'm doing while I'm standing. Like let's say I'm at the booth. Well, I want to memorize that script while I'm standing. Okay. If I'm memorizing a service call script, I'm going to memorize it sitting down. There's a lot of science behind how your body remembers those positions. And so if you're trying to memorize something in a booth, stand up and do it like you're at the booth. If you're trying to memorize something in home or when you're sitting down, sit down when you try to memorize it. So that was a big tip for me. And then this may sound kind of silly, but I think one of the things that's been a massive, massive help that people don't really talk about a lot is the compound interest on the scripts. Okay. And so it sounds weird, but when I for when I was able to memorize, and I'll just use the example of a service call script. Over time, as I did more and more and more appointments, that service call script, I could then see in real time like what was working and like what part I would pay attention to, like what part people would react at. Okay. And I'll give you a quick example. When I am going over the salmon knife, I call the salmon knife the melon knife. All right. So when I'm going over the salmon knife with a customer, I noticed there's a video on YouTube. If you just type in like Jason Jeffrey um, salmon knife or Jason Jeffrey melon video, there's a video of Jason Jeffrey cutting a watermelon. And what I noticed, because I had my script so on point, when I was going over this video with a client, there's a part in the video where he like scoops the rind from the melon. And I noticed at the end of that video, a customer would be like, oh, I could never do that. I'd cut my hand off. Right. And so I kind of tweaked my script a little bit to say, like, right as he's finishing, I would say something to the effect of like, and do you see how it doesn't like fly out of the melon? It's because he's not really like yanking it hard. He's just letting the knife work. And that was a little tiny change in the script that I was able to make because I had the script down so well. Um, and then that was like 2 years later that I figured that out. And now nobody ever says that anymore. And that's just the compound interest of like knowing the script so well that you can pick out one little tiny thing that's happening and you can make an adjustment. So that was a huge thing for me. But also with that, I'll say being able to customize your scripts as well, right? So in that upgrade nowadays, where this has kind of evolved to in service calls is, we go over an upgrade, and then you get to the end and maybe the customer is like, not feeling the upgrade or whatever. Maybe there's one or two items they wouldn't use in there, or you can kind of customize the upgrade to, fit what they want and not change the price. And that's just been a little tweak on the script that we've all used over the last few years as well. So something that's been helpful there. The next thing, as far as like investing in your business, I want to talk about investing like monetarily in your business as well. And again, you guys are, for the most part, probably all doing this. I assume most of you guys have a mentor, but if you don't have a mentor, this has been one of my biggest reasons, if not the biggest reason, I've had growth over the last few years. There is no way that I could do any of this kind of stuff on my own. Figuring out scripts or, tweaking scripts or coming up with new ideas, or how do you sell fan sets and how do you, kind of bundle cookware together at the booth or any of this. Like, there's no way I can figure that out on my own. So one of the things I would encourage you guys to do is try to find somebody that maybe matches your selling style, that already has what you want, and try to mentor with them. Right. I think that's a huge, huge part. I've been mentoring with the same guy for the last 6 years, and I don't see an end in sight in that. I think he's, just today I was on a conference call with him, and he was teaching me something totally new today. It's the same concept that we've been learning, but we've kind of perfected things over the years, or we're trying to perfect things over the years. And now it's turned into this whole different way of pitching, right? And so I think finding a mentor that fits has been a huge part for me as well. As far as investing financially into your business as well, a huge, huge turning point for me in the last few years has been hiring an assistant. And I remember when my mentor was like trying to talk me into hiring an assistant, I was like, dude, like I run a pretty simple business, like I do service calls, service events, and shows. Like, I don't really need an assistant. I don't have a ton of stuff for her to do. Um, and he was just like, hire one, you'll find stuff for her to do. And I did not believe him at all. I was like, I don't think so. And I've been with her for now 2 years. My business legitimately would not run without her. So I think an assistant is vital in what we do. And I'll kind of give you a few ways in which I use my assistant, because I remember at first when I started working with her, I was like, I have no idea even what to use this girl for. Like, I don't know what she could do for me. And so I'll kind of go over a couple ways that she's really helped. One of the things I have her do, she has a weekly task list, and she tends to complete them every Monday. And so those weekly tasks are things that need to happen every week. So the first thing that she does on Monday, and she does this every day, but she handles all my email. Okay, so if a customer emails in and they broke off a knife, Jen is the one that sends them the form on how to send them back. Um, Early on in working with her, I created many years ago a Word document that is called a How to Choose and Use Guide, and it was this crappy looking like Word document. It was awful, and so I sent that to her, and I was like, "Hey, can you make this look pretty?" And she made it look like out of a catalog, and it's got like a picture of each knife in there and like what it's used for. And then I have her customize it to the customer's order. So that way, if I'm on an appointment and they're like, well, how am I going to remember what to use these for? I'm like, oh, we got you. We'll send you a how to choose and use guide. Just send me an email. I'll have my assistant send it over. And so when people email that they need a how to choose and use guide, it's not me having to remember how to do or when to do it. It's just her doing it for me. She also kind of organizes all my leads. So if I'm at a show and I get some leads there, I just snap her a picture of them, send them to her. She uploads all of them. I have a huge list of customers for service calls, and it's in a Google spreadsheet. And she, like, as I'm making calls, I go through and I highlight, and I make notes and all this. She then goes back and she reorganizes it so it looks all pretty. She organizes them in zip codes. So that way, when I'm calling, I can call all of these zip codes, the area that I'm in. So she does all the organizational stuff on the Google spreadsheets. Currently, what she's doing, anytime I send out any marketing, text messages for service events, any of that, she handles all of that. So I text her and I say, hey, here's the dates we want to do the sharpening event. Here's the hotel we have it booked at. And then she gets into my Acuity, my scheduling system. She builds out the schedule. And then I say, hey, we want to send it to a 30-mile radius of this zip code. She does the query. She sends out, I tell her about what we want to say in the text. She cleans it up. She sends it out. Um, she also then tracks everything for me on the back end. So when we get a text, I'm going to try to share my screen. Um, when we get a text from, like I sent out a price increase text, back when we had the price increase. Um, Give me 1 second here. She will track everything and then she'll put it in a Google spreadsheet and she'll track um, all the responses that we've gotten. So let's see if I can share my screen. So like these are all people that have opted out of all the texts. Here's follow-up and inquiries, general hot list she has here. She has all my events coming up. These are all people that this is a text blast we sent out for the state fair. They wanted to have their knife sharpened, right? So she does all this. She tracks like when they replied. Jen did not reply to that one. So all of this is being tracked in a Google sheet, and that makes it really, really clean for me when I need to go back and book sharpenings, follow up with people. So that's been really helpful. There's a push coming up next week, at least for us. I don't know about for you guys, but in that push, it's going to be kind of convoluted in the marketing that we're sending out. I'm doing a sharpening event next week, then I'm doing a show next weekend, and then doing a show the weekend after that, and then a sharpening event the week after that, and then we're going to do our May sale. And so that's like 5 different events that we're marketing different areas and different people for. She's handling all of that. So this year I did a tiered system. All right. So I'm doing a sharpening event next week, next Tuesday and Wednesday in an area about 2.5 hours from me. And what I did last year that really worked is I tiered these people in, tier one, tier two, tier three based on sales opportunities. So, for example, tier one is going to be my highest sales opportunity. So those are people that they're shows for, or sorry, lead from a show that I haven't seen yet. So they're not past customers. So those are going to get prioritized because those are new clients or new acquisition. And then that text went out on Friday. They get first shot at booking. And then tier two is people that I have not seen in the last 2 years that live in a 40-mile radius of that area. Um, that sales opportunity is higher because I haven't seen them in the last 2 years. That's higher than people I've seen the last 2 years, but lower than show leads, right? And then tier three is everybody else, people that I've seen over the last 2 years and all that. So she's for each of these service events, she's sending out 3 texts to each of those tiers, and then she'll send out one last reminder email to book it. And that's 4 texts to different groups of people. And then there's 2 of those events. So that's 8 texts that go out. And then we're going to do marketing and we're going to do the show marketing. So all of that stuff that I couldn't handle in the past, she's handling all of that. There's no way I could do any of that without having an assistant. So I think having an assistant it's been a lifesaver in my business. So I highly, highly recommend that. Um, and then as far as schedule goes, I kind of alluded to my schedule before, and I think the schedule is what I have really perfected in my life. And I say my life because this schedule you guys may hear and be like, I freaking love that. I want to do that. You may hear and be like, that sounds like hell, whatever, right? But um, I really love my schedule because it's consistent week in and week out. I know what I'm doing. If you pick out September 22nd, I can look at my calendar and tell you exactly what I'm doing that day. And it creates predictability for me, right? And predictability creates consistency. And so the way I have my schedule worked out, I basically work Monday to Friday. All right. Except for like 2 times a week. I also 2 to 3 times a week, depending on the month, I work a show. All right. So essentially, the easy breakdown of my schedule: Monday, just a phone call day. Every single Monday, you know exactly what I'm doing. I'm sitting down in front of my computer right here in this chair, and I'm cranking through phone calls. Okay. Um, does anybody, by the way, show of hands? I don't know if anybody's doing demos, service calls. If you guys are doing those, does anybody like sometimes struggle to make calls, like sit down and like make those calls? Show of hands. Cool.
How'd you know?
Yeah, yeah. It can be kind of tough, right? Um, once you do it enough, it's no longer tough. Like I promise you, I used to say like phone calls are the hardest thing we do. Like it's not. It's not hard. Like once you are doing it consistently, it's not a difficult thing to do. Like this door right here, I usually have it open. I have my big screen TV out there, and I just throw on some sports. That's background noise, and then I'm truly just sitting here, just crushing the phone every Monday. I sit down in my office sometime between 8:30 and 8:45 in the morning. My first phone call right at 9 o'clock every single morning, and then I go until usually it's somewhere between 4 and 6. It depends on how the day goes. But that's my Monday, and like everybody in my life knows it. All my friends know it. My wife knows it. My family knows it. They know not to call me between 9 and 5 on Monday. That's the most important day of my week. And it's not hard because that's just what I do. The best way I can describe that, by the way, I was talking to my wife about this, and she used to. I mentioned this earlier. She used to sell Cutco, and so it's kind of cool to bounce things off of her, and she kind of knows this world. And she was like, I think one thing that you do really well that I think a lot of people struggle with is that like you just do the things that are in your schedule to do, right? And that sounds easy, but she was like, I think about it like the gym, right? Like working out. If you guys have ever been in a really consistent gym schedule or workout routine, it's not hard to get up and go to the gym in the morning, or it's not hard to, go to the gym after work because that's what you're used to doing. The hardest thing about going to the gym or about working out is when you haven't done it in like a few weeks or a few months, and then you're trying to get yourself back into it. And it's hard to get back to the gym and you're sore and it's like, so that's kind of how I look at my phone calls. When you're doing it consistently, it's just not hard anymore because it's what you do. So every Monday, I sit down, I make phone calls. 9 to 4, 9 to 6, 9 to 5, depends on how the phone calls go. Tuesdays, same schedule every single Tuesday. First appointment starts at 9, and I'm doing 4 appointments that day. I usually end sometime between 4 and 5, depending on the day. Um, so I window schedule my appointments. So I start at 9. My next one is sometime between 10:30 and 11:30. And in my calendar, it's booked for 11. But then when I talk to the client, I say sometime between 10:30 and 11:30. Third one, so first one's at 9, then 11, then 1 o'clock. I'll get there sometime between 12:30 and 1:30. And then the last one is at 3 o'clock. I'll get there sometime between 2:30 and 3:30. So that's kind of how I book. I do try to be really strategic about where I book. So I usually sort by zip codes. Um, if I'm in 27613, that's where I'm going to be at tomorrow. I try to book everything in 27613 zip code or like right next to it, 27614. I try not to do this driving. I want to have like appointments that are 10 to 15 minutes separated from each other. If I have to do one further than that, I will, but I try not to. So that's Tuesday. Wednesdays, I kind of use as a cleanup day. So Wednesdays are it's working from home. So I'm on a conference call every Wednesday. And then outside of the conference calls, I'm making phone calls to set up service calls. I'm doing follow up calls for business gifts. It's kind of my cleanup day to clean up anything I didn't get booked. So Monday, I prioritize booking Tuesday hard. Like I'm only booking for Tuesday on Monday. If I need to book something for Thursday or whatever, I can't get customer booked on Tuesday. Sure, I'll book them for Thursday or Friday. But Monday, my focus is Tuesday. Once I get Tuesday booked, then I'm working on Thursday, Friday. Wednesday is a cleanup day. Okay. And then Thursdays, same as Tuesdays. So Thursdays, 9 to 4, 9 to 5, appointments, same thing, 9, 11, 1, 3. And then Fridays, I usually do a half day. It kind of depends on the day, on the time of year. I started this a couple summers ago doing half days and kind of got a little bit addicted to it, to be honest. And the cool thing is we get to set our own schedule. So I like a half day Friday. So I try to do a half day Friday. If I can't, I can't, right? If I don't get Tuesday or Thursday booked totally, I have to do 4 appointments. I'll do that, but I like to do a 9 and an 11 o'clock and be done by 1. Um, and then the only time that really changes is if there's a show, and my schedule's exactly the same: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Where it changes if there's a show. The show, let's say a show is Friday, Saturday, Sunday. My Thursday will be my half day of appointments. So Thursday I'll do 9 and then 11, and then I'll go set up for the show Thursday, and then that's it. I'm done by 5. I start the show on Friday. Um, One of the things I was talking to my wife about too, when I was talking to her about my schedule, is I was like, it's crazy. I think the reason I like it that way, the reason I like working a 9 to 5, one, I mentioned the predictability, but two, I'm like, I like I like to have time off. Don't get me wrong. I love to travel. I love to take trips. I love to take a long weekend. But I try to be really strategic in those things, right? And so for me, I'm like, well, during the week, let's say I do a show Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Well, during the week, my wife's working. She works from home. She's working 9 to 5. Like, I'm not doing anything with her during the workday. All of my friends tend to work traditional, corporate jobs. They work 9 to 5. Like, I'm not doing anything with them. I have one friend who is a goofball that I love to go golfing with every now and again because he doesn't work a traditional job. But for the most part, all of my friends work 9 to 5. So I'm like, well, what the hell am I going to be doing here? Like, am I going to take a day off to like sit and like just rot in my house? Like, I'm not. I'd rather take that day off, at a different time and go on a vacation or travel or do something with Chrissy where we have a scheduled day off. Like, I don't want to have a day off where I'm just like sitting, like that's no fun for me. Now, that may be different for you, right? But it's planned, is kind of my point. Just because I work Friday, Saturday, Sunday show, like, I'm not automatically going to take a day off next week. Again, if it's planned, I will. But just because I worked, a weekend show, like that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm taking a Monday through Friday off the next week. And again, that may not be your thing, and that's okay. But I think so often, we're like, oh, I just worked a weekend. Like, I need a day off, or I should take a day off. And maybe you should, I don't know. But you don't have to. And so I used to think that, like, oh, like, I'm gonna have to, or I'm gonna like burn out, and it's just not the case, for me at least. Last thing I'll kind of point out here on schedule that was a huge, huge, huge thing for me. Now, this was years ago. One of the things that people always asked over and over is like, how do you not take an evening appointment? Right? Like, what do you do with those people that, want to get their knives sharpened and, all that, but they work during the day? Um, I don't want this to sound like a jerk answer. But like, I'm doing you a service. Like how do you get your Wi-Fi figured out? How do you take your dog to get groomed? How do you run to the bank? Like those people are all providing a service. Like, I'm no different. If somebody needs to come over their house and fix their AC unit, like, they're not making them do it in the evening. Like, I'm no different than those people. So like, you're just gonna have to see me during that. I don't know, figure it out. And I don't want that to sound mean or rude, but when you get down to the basis of it, it's like, well, like, I'm helping you here. Now, in order to kind of have that mentality, you have to have enough leads to where you can, like, you can crank through them, whatever. You don't say, if you don't want to see me, like, that's cool. But I don't want to take evening appointments. Um, Years ago, my DVM said this to me, and this was so crucial. He said, Cody, you've got to learn how to put the business to bed. And I think nowadays in my life, I do that really, really well. Um, I'm not taking a call after 5. I'm just not doing it. Um, I'm not like, my life comes first, and like, of course I'm gonna run my business, but the boss me is gonna set my schedule, and like, the boss me is gonna tell me, like, all right, well, you're working here, you're working here, you're working here, and then when employee me steps into my schedule, like, it's already set up for me. Like, I'm sorry, I can't work at 5. And so putting the business to bed, whatever time that may be for you, right? Obviously, a show weekend, that's going to be a little bit later. But maybe you're putting the business to bed at 6. But whatever time that is, phone goes off. We're not answering emails. We're not answering phone calls. Like, I'm putting that to bed. That really helps, at least me, not burn out. It helps me, be able to work and work consistently. So I hope that makes sense. But the schedule is something that I've been really, really big on, and it's something I'm so grateful that we're able to have and build. We can create our own schedule, but that does take planning. It takes discipline, and so as long as you have those things tied in, I think you can work pretty easily, pretty consistently. Um, so I wanted to touch on that. And then kind of the fun part of the talk. I really wanted to jump in, if you guys are cool with it, to like some meat and potatoes things here. And I wanted to talk about like upgrades, and just kind of like, I guess, the fun side of like, sales tips here. So I think I've a lot of my business is built on working with Cutco owners. And I think that's where I've kind of really kind of made a big difference in my business, was figuring that out. So this is much easier to kind of talk about, as far like, if we refer to it as an in-home appointment. And the only reason I say that is because a show, I typically tend to get the questions of like, well, does it depend on what they have? And what if they have this? What if they have that? And so I'm going to kind of go into this in a more controlled environment and just pretend that we're in like an in-home setting. Are y'all cool with that?
Yes.
Cool.
Yes.
And it can transition, by the way. So like, and obviously this would be very, very, very similar at the booth. Um, but I want to kind of talk about like upgrades, and how I pitch my upgrades, how I sell the upgrades, and what's kept my average order around $1,100 over the last few years. And so um, the big thing when we talk about upgrades, we talk about selling to Cutco owners. Does anybody in here do a wish list approach by chance? Does anybody like go in and like you're creating a wish list every time?
Anybody? Yeah, some of them do. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool, cool, cool. And I think that's a great way to do it. I also think what's tough about doing that is, at least for me, I think it's been hard for me to kind of create urgency that way. Um, and I used to go in, I used to create a wish list, and I used to do this like try close and all that, and it worked. But I think what's worked so much better in my business with working with Cutco owners is just having like a traditional upgrade approach, no matter what. Um, and so I'll kind of give you some verbiage here. I know I may be going kind of fast. You guys may not get everything. Maybe try to bullet point some things here. But the first thing I do in home and at the booth, when I get into the upgrade, the phrasing that I use is, "Hey, Miss Jones, have you ever heard of what Cutco calls their requested knives by chance? Have you ever heard of what Cutco calls their requested knives by chance?" Like 99% of the time, the answer is no, right? So, oh, cool. So just to kind of bring you up to speed, what's happened over the last few years, people that owned our original set, they literally wrote letters into Cutco and they said, "Hey, we like the knives. They're awesome. They're great. They're wonderful." But they kept asking us to make specific items that would complement what they already owned. And we did. We called them the requested knives. And by the way, when I'm at the booth, that voice inflection of like, "we did," right? That's the exact tonality and voice inflection that I use, just to kind of like pull some people in, right? So, and we actually did. We called them the requested knives. Um, and so that's kind of my intro to it. I don't know if you know this, but what's happened over the last couple of years, people that owned our original set wrote into Cutco and they said, "Hey, we love the knives. They're great. They're wonderful." But they kept asking us to make specific knives that would complement what we already owned. And we did. We called them the requested knives. Here, actually, I'll tell you what, I'll give you a quick example. All right. And then the structure here is what's really important. You guys all know how to sell the knives and how to sell a petite santoku and all that. So I'm not going to go into that as much, but the structure I think is what's super important here. All right. So um, I try to be strategic in how I'm like what order I'm showing these things in. So the first three knives need to be what I call big hitters. Okay. So the first three knives, what I found to be the best order is a 5 inch, a 4 inch paring knife, and a cheese knife. That's the order in which I show the first three in. Okay, so it's the petite santoku, the 4 inch paring knife, and then the cheese knife. By the way, quick little backtracking here. My upgrade, and this is what's also been super, super helpful. My upgrade does not change based on what they own. Okay, so something people always ask is like, well, what if they have like an essentials set or like a studio set or it doesn't matter. The reason it doesn't matter is I'm not trying to upgrade them to a specific set. I'm trying to sell them an upgrade. Um, the knives from the homemaker to the ultimate, in my opinion, are the best knives we make. And so if they have a studio and they're like missing out on like a butcher knife, it would be wonderful if you can sell them a butcher knife. But I'm trying to take the path of least resistance. And for me, it's harder to sell a butcher knife than it is a boning knife. And so like I don't really want to talk about the butcher knife, right? I'm trying to sell the easiest ones to sell to get to the price point that I'm trying to get to. Um, and so the first three, it's 5 inch, 4 inch, then cheese knife. Right there, the reason the first three are the big hitters is when you introduce the requested knives and you show them something that maybe they're not like super sold on, right? Like I'll give you an example, like a salmon knife. If you show that first, they're not really going to be like pulled into this upgrade, right? You want to get something to pull them in. And so the 5 inch, the 4 inch, and the cheese knife are the three that are like, wait, I kind of do like these requested knives, right? Like these just make sense. And so once you show those first three, now they're like, they in their head, they go from like, well, I wasn't planning on buying anything to like, wait, I kind of like these requested knives. Okay. And then the fourth one that I always show is a boning knife. So I go 5 inch, 4 inch cheese, boning knife. Okay. I refer to the boning knife as the most no-brainer knife Cutco's ever made. And then I go over how it's the raw meats knife, right? By this point, you've showed them four knives, assuming they eat meat. You've showed them four knives that like truly everybody should have in their kitchen. Like it makes it so much easier to sell an upgrade at that point. All right. Sometimes, depending on the client, I'll check in at this point. So after that fourth knife, I'll say something to the effect of like, um, and sometimes I'll do this before, sometimes I'll do this after the fourth knife. It's really, I know it's kind of crappy to say, but it's a read on the customer. But I'll say something like, Miss Jones, what's super cool, by the way, have you heard of what they call their knife upgrade program? No? Okay. So the way this works is instead of having to rebuy a whole set, Cutco allows me to take the price of the set that comes with those requested knives. They allow me to give you credit for what you already have essentially off the price. And you basically just pay the difference between the two. Okay. So they allow me to take the price of the set that comes with these requested knives. They allow me to give you credit for what you already have off the price, and then you just pay the difference. They call it a knife upgrade. Tell you what, if you're cool with it, if you want, I'll just show you like what comes in the rest of this upgrade, and then you kind of steer the ship. I'll make it pretty easy for you. And now, again, you showed them four knives, and then you're like, hey, like, this is how the program works. Like, you cool if I just show it to you? Like, almost every time they're like, yeah, that works. You know? So it's really simple. So those are the first four knives. The next knife in my upgrade is the salmon knife. I refer to it as the melon knife. Um, so, and then I've kind of mentioned earlier the Jason Jeffrey video on this. I always use that. And then the last two, what I found in the last two is whatever are your favorite two knives in the ultimate set that don't come in the homemaker, or really whatever your two favorites are, put those in your upgrade. Okay. So for me, it's a hearty slicer and a vegetable knife. And the reason I say put those last is because you want to end on enthusiasm, right? You want to end on that high note. Um, so put your favorite two last. You're going to naturally end a little bit more excited on your two favorites. Um, and that's pretty much it. So from the upgrade, I'm like, yeah, missions, and they put it all together. It actually comes with a storage unit that houses everything. So it houses your originals and what you currently have. And they put it together and they call it a knife upgrade. It's pretty cool. And then it kind of depends from there. Usually my transition phrase is submissions. That's just something to keep in mind as we flip through the rest of the book here. And then I'll go into like a Cutco collection, verbiage, or I'll go into a Cutco kitchen verbiage, and then that'll kind of lead into cookware scripts, flatware scripts, which we don't have a ton of time to do all of that. But I think the upgrade is what's super key to nail. I would say like 80 to 85% of my orders are like some version of a knife upgrade, right? The question that I get a lot is like, well, how do you go from like this knife upgrade to keeping people from just buying one or two or three knives, right? And I think that's really important. Like, how do you go from like, you present the upgrade, you show pricing, and instead of dropping to like, a buy three get one free, or like a one or two or three knives, how do you keep that average order high? That magic is all in the drop down. Okay. And again, I know this sounds kind of like basic, but the drop down I think is wildly, wildly important. I do mine 100% on price points. Okay. And this gets a little weird, maybe a little confusing. So I'm going to try to walk you guys through I'm going to walk you through exactly what I do when I'm showing like a knife upgrade or whatever. So I get to the end of the upgrade. I just kind of did all that for you. I never, ever, ever mention steak knives or table knives. You can if you want. There's different schools of thought on this. I don't do it, and I'll explain why in a second. I think oftentimes we end up giving too much information to a customer when we don't really need to. Okay, I think I have a really good buddy who is no longer in Cutco, but or I guess he is a little bit, but really good friend of mine, and he was an incredible salesperson, but he was so, I would always say he was like so tied down in the weeds on things. And we would have so many conversations, and he's like getting into all these details about the upgrade and all that. And I'd be like, dude, like they don't need to know all of that, right? They just need to know it comes with these knives. Here's how it works, like simple, right? Matter of fact, if you guys are familiar with fan sets and what fan sets are, the fan set, I've sold, I don't know, probably a dozen of them. It's every single knife we make and two ultimate blocks of 24 steak knives. Every time I've sold one, I've legitimately only talked about the knives that come in the upgrade. That's it. Like that, it's the craziest thing in the world. And I remember three of them specifically. I only brought out three knives. That's all I had to bring out was three knives. And I just think so many times we try to get so in the weeds with all of this, where you just need to keep it simple, and then you can answer questions along the way, right? So that's why I don't cover the steak knives. So I'm going to do this for you kind of like I do it for a client. Again, I know I'm going to kind of go a little fast here, but so we just got to the end of the upgrade. I'm for simplicity purposes, I'm going to say that we're not pitching cookware or flatware. I've mentioned it, but we're not pitching it, right? So, oops, let's see. Now remember, I'm a little kind of not tech savvy, so bear with me here. Are you guys seeing the collection, the knife set, the cookware, the flatware?
Yes. Yes.
Cool. So every single time, no matter what, this is where I'm starting my close at. Okay. So these are all sheets from Vast Action. So Ms. Jones, just so you have an idea, like this is kind of an overview of Cutco. This is what most of my customers are building to over time. All right, it's our full set of the knives, full set of the flatware, full set of the cookware. We call it the kitchen renovation. It's really meant to help people downsize their kitchen and just have like, American-made products that last a lifetime, makes it easy to cook. Okay, so it's really just, again, it's designed to clean everything out. It's kind of like a kitchen remodel. Most people, when they remodel their kitchens, they redo their countertops, their cabinets, their backsplashes, and they spend 20, 30, 40, 50 grand on doing that stuff, but then they just throw the same junk back in there over and over again. This is kind of the kitchen upgrade that is going to move with you when you move, and you'll never have to do it again. All right, so this is your kind of your one and done. And then I kind of take a step back. I'm like, most people don't do this all up front, especially if they're like, I can tell they're a little freaked out. Most people don't do this all up front, but I just wanted to give you kind of a bird's eye view of Cutco and the Cutco collection there. This is kind of a read on the customer. But if let's say I don't have a good read, or maybe I know that we're just talking about a knife upgrade at this point. Let's say I know they're not interested in cookware or flatware. I have them rank them, and I have them do this quickly. But I'm like, so Miss Jones, like between like, and by the way, the verbiage here is really important. Okay, so between like the cookware, the forever cookware, the waterless cookware, the forever flatware, the forever like bundle or the accessory bundle, or here's the important part to get, or just having the right knives to cut things properly. What would be like, as far as level of importance, what would be like number one? What would be number two? What would be number three? Okay, number four. And then you're going to get some variation of like, well, we really don't need the cookware, or, whatever. Maybe they are into the cookware. Most of the time, it's going to be the knives. If they ever rank the cookware higher, I know they've liked the knives, so like we're gonna do some sort of a bundle close. So talk for a different time, but let's say they rank the knives. They're like, just having the right knives to cut things properly. Cool. I'll tell you what. Are you cool if I just skip a few steps and just go right to the knives? Is that cool with you? Okay, awesome. So I'll tell you what. So I'll show you this, Miss Jones, just as like a just so you know here. So this is Cutco's kind of full set here. It's the 34 prep knives. It's the 24 steak knives. This is kind of the full set. Most of the time, here's what I say. It seems like this is probably a little bit too much for you. So I'll skip a few steps. And actually, if you're cool with it too, like here's some of our other like full sets. Okay. If you're cool with it, I'm just gonna skip those and I'll just go right to like the basic upgrade. Is that cool with you? All right, awesome. I'm basically flashing these prices. So what you don't want the client to think is like what we're selling them is the biggest possible thing that they could buy. Like there's so much more else. There's so much other things that they can buy. So that's why I'm showing that. And it allows you to get to a higher price a little bit easier without them thinking that you're trying to sell them like the biggest thing, right? Um, so I'll flash those prices. And then here's where I start the close. Yeah. So, Ms. Jones, the retail price of the set, if you did not own Cutco at all, and you said, hey, what's the retail price of the set? The retail price of the set is $47.44. So it's think 4,700, 4,750. All right. And by the way, I think, and I feel a little silly saying this, but I think y'all like our prices might be different here. So kind of bear with me on that. But it's 47.44. This is one upgrade. You have an option. This is one of your options here. This one, it takes you from the 47.44 down to 38.80. And then what you pay today is that there, the 5 pay. And I explain the 5 pay. And I'm like, so that's one option. Another option, I'll show you real quick. Okay, bear with me. Does this one say, is this one like 3,400? Can you guys give me a verbal yes or no?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Cool. All right. Thank you. So then I kind of dual close with 38 and 3,400. And I'm like, Miss Jones, this is another option. This is just a few less knives. This one is 34, whatever, and then whatever you pay today. So I can do one of a few things. I can either focus on one set over the other, or I can show you a difference between like this one here and this one here. Okay. And then typically what's going to happen, sometimes they're going to pick, right? Like, I had an upgrade yesterday that was just like, well, show me the difference. And then I showed them the difference and she bought like the $3,800 one. So sometimes that happens. Oftentimes, though, you're going to get some sort of objection that is like, we don't need all of that or whatever. This is why I don't mention the steak knives. Okay. You guys can see in this one, it comes with 12 of the bigger steak knives. A lot of people, because I don't talk about it, a lot of times I'll close that. And then at the end, I'm like, oh, Miss Jones, like the newer steak knives are just going to go across the bottom. And then you can throw the smaller ones in the drawer. And they're like, oh, that's awesome. This comes with steak knives. And I'm like, yeah. But oftentimes if they're like, let's say I don't close that, that's the first thing that I can then I can like sell off of. So Miss Jones, this one, now I'm talking about the steak knives. This one comes with 12 of the bigger steak knives. Do you guys want or need 12 of the bigger steak knives? Oh, you don't? Oh, cool. Then I can drop down and I can drop down to like the next price point. Okay. And so the next price point is going to be what I use. Again, I feel silly here, but the next one should be like 25 or 2,600. It's basically, I don't know. What's this one say? Can you guys tell me? I can't see it on my end.
26.95.
Okay, cool. So usually this is kind of my next price point. This is going to be the same exact upgrade. It's just with 4 of the steak knives. And Vast Action has this exact same sheet that is 4 of the table knives. Okay. So the price points are going to be 3,800, 3,400, and then my next one is going to be 26 or 25, depending on if I'm showing with steak knives or table knives. And this is all a read based on the customer. Now, if I'm close to closing 3,400, maybe I'll just drop it down to like, maybe like if they're like right on the fence at 34, maybe I need to do something and I can close at like 2,900, right? And so maybe it's just 6 steak knives instead of 12 or whatever, right? And then here's kind of the secret weapon that I think what allows me to finish so much higher on a service call or in the booth. It is what I call customizing the upgrade. So let's say at this point you get an objection, okay? And they're like, well, Cody, like, I don't need all of that, or hey, it's just not the right time, or whatever. Hey, totally get it, no problem at all. Matter of fact, one of the coolest things that we can do right now, we can actually customize an upgrade for you and get you, because technically that upgrade is the smallest upgrade that we sell that comes with these items here. Okay. But we can customize an upgrade for you and get you the exact knives that you want. But here, I'll show you. And then I'll kind of pull up this price point here. I feel really silly on this. I'm so sorry. This one should be around 1,800 bucks. Is that what you guys are seeing?
Yeah.
Cool. So this is my next price point, and I'm going to close at 1,800. And on this, what I'm going to do that customizes it is I'm going to say, so Miss Jones, I'm going to skip a few steps. I'll show you this here. So this one's super cool because you still get the longer paring knife in this and the raw meats knife. This one comes with like a cleaver here though. Like, do you guys need or want like the big meat cleaver? 9 times out of 10, it's no. Cool. I'll come back to that one in just a sec. And then it does come with my favorite, my favorite knife, the vegetable one. That's the one we were slicing up the potato with. And then this one, it comes with a smaller bread knife. I'll come back to that one in a second. And then this one also does, have the salmon knife or the melon knife in there. Now, what you don't see in here is I know you really like that one with the holes in it, like the cheese knife. So one of the special offers I'll go ahead and do, we can take out this bread knife, and instead we can put the cheese knife in here. And all I'm doing is I'm literally just using a package, a number that's going to get me to a price point I want, and then putting the knives that they want in there. So we'll take this out. We'll put in a cheese knife. We'll take out this cleaver. And instead of the cleaver, I know the one thing that doesn't come in here that you really liked was the one for like the squashes and sweet potatoes. So we'll take that out. We'll put this in, right? And you'd be surprised how often this one closes, because if you think about the value of it, I've showed 7 knives. When I go over the upgrade, I mention it comes with a cleaver and a bread knife, but I do that. I don't show it. I just mention it. And so basically 7 of the 7 knives I showed them, they're getting in a smaller upgrade. So it tends to close quite a bit. So I'll kind of customize there. Now, if you still get an objection there, the next option down from here, and notice, by the way, what I'm doing is I'm not letting them go from like an upgrade to like, well, what are those like 3 knives? Let me just get 3 knives, right? What I'm doing is I'm following the steps of this whole upgrade process. And when they ask, like, what are the price of those 3 knives? I'll look it up for you. They're usually a couple hundred a piece. It totally depends. Knives range anywhere from like 90 bucks all the way upwards of like 270 bucks, everywhere in between. So I'll look it up for you to be exact. But here, let me skip a few steps. And then that's my transition to go to the next upgrade. And if you do it properly, like it's so wild how like if you do that properly, people are just pleasantly like, yeah, that's cool. Like skip a few steps. That sounds good. So from that 18, if that doesn't close, my next price point, it totally depends on the customer. It's either going to be 1,200 or just below 1,000, right? Maybe like 987 or 889 or something just below 1,000. And the way I'll do that maybe is I'll like ask them, hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, like, you know, where do you fall on having the block, right? Like the piece of wood, just the piece of wood. Or maybe I'll want to keep the block in. But I know that they weren't totally sold on like, a vegetable knife or whatever. So I'll be like, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. And then I'm just kind of writing down from here. So I hope that drop down process makes sense. I know it's a lot to try to cram into a short period of time, but I thought it was important to go over there. Speaking of time, I know we're kind of close, so I'm going to kind of finish some things up here. But like I said, I thought that was important. A little quick tip I'll give you on the flatware. I'm not phenomenal at selling flatware, but when I do, I typically sell them in 24 place settings. And the thought process behind that is this. It's just my wife. This is what I say to a customer too. It's just my wife and I at home. But the reason we did the full place setting of the 24 is because like think about how often we use a spoon and a fork, right? Like, it's not that we're serving 24 people, but when we use spoons and forks, like for example, we wake up, we go downstairs, we stir our coffee with a spoon, throw it in the dishwasher. Then we eat our oatmeal for breakfast. We both throw a spoon in the dishwasher. Maybe then we have a salad or something for lunch. There's 2 more forks or 2 more spoons, right? By the time we get to dinner, we've already used, it's just Chrissy and I there. We've already used 4 or 5 spoons, 4 or 5 forks. Like it's pretty much gone. We were having to run the dishwasher every day. So it's not about setting the place setting, is the 24. Most people do the 24 just because of how often we use spoons and forks. you'd be surprised how many like head nods you get with that. And they're like, oh, that's right. And so that's helped me sell a ton of additional flatware there as well. Last thing I'll kind of talk about as to kind of wrap things up here. I think one of the biggest differences in my business has come from mindset. I remember last year I was giving a talk, and at least where we're at, a lot of people were like, "Man, shows are down this year. Shows are down this year," and it's funny that my share results were up. And I was having this conversation with somebody from my mentor group, and I was like, it's not that shows are necessarily up. It's not like attendance for us is up, but my show results are up. And the reason that is like I just refuse to believe that shows are down. And that sounds stupid and crazy and ridiculous, I know, but like our brains, I think, have so much power in the results that we get. And I think that's been huge. Um, Over the weekend, I was also talking with a coworker, and the whole thing came up about like not letting numbers affect how you feel. And so, for example, no matter where I'm at, if I'm ahead for the week or the month or behind for the week or the month or the year, it doesn't affect how I feel about my goals, right? And I think that's really important. Like I was telling that coworker at the booth the other day, I did a vintage market days. I sold 20 grand the first day, and then the second day at the booth, I was like, I couldn't sell anything. Like it was the crazy, like it was like, pulling teeth to try to sell something. And the coworker was like, yeah, but at least you had that cushion of the 20 grand. And I was like, I get it. But also like, I'm here, like I'm at the booth, like I want to sell stuff. I'm here. I'm taking the time. Like I should be selling stuff right now. So it was frustrating. And he goes, yeah, that's actually really important. Like not letting what happened the day before the day or the 2 days before affect you good or bad. I had a really rough show over the weekend. Saturday was a terrible day. I sold like $400, and it was just, I mean, it was super super busy but couldn't close anything. And I remember coming back and being like, all right, like stick in it, like nothing's good or bad, it's just the meaning that we attach to it. And then boom, had a great day on Sunday. So um, I think that's really big. And by the way, if you're taking notes, I would write down this mentality. Nothing is good or bad. It's just the meaning that we give to it. All right. Nothing is good or bad. It's just the meaning that we give to it. Whatever happened today is not good. It's not bad. It's just part of what's happening to get you to the place that you need to be. Right. And as soon as I got that mentality down, it takes a lot of pressure off. Right. Like this wasn't a good show. This wasn't a bad show. This is just a show that happened, and it's gonna get me to the end of my year, right? So I think that was huge. But um, in wrapping up, I know we're tight on time here. Once I got all of these things in my business to connect, or started to connect, I haven't fully connected it yet. Um, but working with the right people in my business, mentor, assistant, having all my scripts memorized and internalized, and being able to make them my own, and having a schedule that I can follow no matter what, day in and day out. And then just having the right skill set and the right mentality. I think once I got those things to connect, I think those are the big jumps that I saw in my business, right? So I hope some of this helped. I appreciate you guys having me on. Thank you so, so much. And I know we're kind of tight on time here, but if there's any questions, super happy to answer.
Wow. Let's first clap. So we have just a short little bit here, but I did want to, since he offered, does anybody want to ask a question about something that he shared and brought up?
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead,
I
Jen.
have a question about your structure for your service calls. Do you keep it the same every time? And if you do, what is that? And if you don't, like, how do you know when to start showing stuff, talking about stuff? Like, yeah. You go with it.
Yeah. And just to make sure I understand the question, you're saying like the structure as far as like I walk in, I, get the knives out. Like, are you saying like how I do the appointment? Is that your question?
Yeah, when you kind of start showing new stuff, or if it's up to them more, or if you lead it.
Yeah, no, great question. And again, kind of a crappy answer, but kind of both really. Like obviously the first, you get there, you get them to have all their knives out. I do ask the same questions every time. So if you're taking notes, there's like 3 to 4 questions I ask every single time that I think are important. How'd you get the stuff? Who'd you get it from? So it's like, tell me your Cutco story. 2 is, hey, is there anything you use in here a ton or anything that you never use at all? How often are you cooking? 1 or 2 times a week, 3 or 4, 5 or 6, or every day? And those are kind of like the 3 main questions. We talk about that for a little bit. And then like there's always something that happens. Y'all know this, that like there's always something that happens or something that's said that you can pick on to like build some rapport there, right? And so I always try to get some rapport in. And then once I get that certain level of rapport, that's as I'm sharpening the knives, that's when I go into the warranty. And then from the warranty, I go into the showing new stuff. So after I cover the warranty, that's when I use that phrase of like, hey, by the way, have you ever heard of what Cutco calls their requested knives? And then that's what kind of leads me into that. So it's rapport, those 3 questions or those 3 questions rapport, and then next thing is warranty, and then getting into the new stuff.
Cool. Thank you. Okay, wait, Alana's got a question. Go
Thank
ahead.
you. Are you able to send us the order if you did that? Because we have all the pages, but I can't see.
Oh, we recorded this.
Oh, it's recorded?
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
By the way, I couldn't see either, so, so I'm happy with the same booth here.
Awesome. Any other questions? Verification, confirmation? Sir, did you talk about leads from service calls? How do you,
Oh, no.
can you, I'm curious. I've always asked this of people, like, how do you transition to getting leads?
Yeah,
Do you ask for leads from service calls or no? Just curious. Yeah.
I do. Yeah. I remember years ago, like 2017, I was coaching with a guy who was a really good friend of mine, and he was, I was younger, so he was like trying to get me to do demos. And my whole career, I've literally done service calls. So like, I think I did like my first month was demos, and then it like went to service calls. So he was like, dude, you should do them. Like your college age, like you can still kind of play that card, right? And I did demos for like 2 months, and I was so bad at doing a demo. I didn't sell anything. My mentor was like, dude, you shouldn't do demos. You should just do service calls. And and I've obviously gotten past that now, right? But my bread and butter is seeing Cutco owners. That's what I enjoy doing. That's what I'm good at doing. And so what I specifically ask for is, hey, who do you know that already owns Cutco as well? And so I asked that. I typically am not getting a ton, and I'm not shooting for a ton. I'm not trying to get 10 or 15. But if I can get 1, 2, 3, referrals, those are good referrals. Those are referrals that already have Cutco. It's easy for me to get in the door. So that's kind of more so what I'm focused on. So I literally just ask at the end, I'm like, hey, Ms. Jones, like, who else do you know that owns Cutco? I know you mentioned earlier, you said you got them from the college kid that was referred to you. Who was it that referred you? Right. And I'll kind of go back to that first,
Oh, that's cool.
how'd you get your Cutco
Who was that
originally?
That's cool. I like that extra line
And
there.
then I don't know, one last thing I'll say on this. I don't know if you guys are utilizing Nextdoor, that app called Nextdoor.
Heard of that?
Yeah. Okay. I highly recommend using it.
I don't think so. What is that?
Like neighbors.
Neighbors?
Talk to
Okay.
each other, yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so literally, and I can send this out, but what I send in this, I send every customer a text before I leave. And what I say to them is I'm like, hey, Miss Jones, like, if you don't mind, I'll kind of make this whole thing easier with the referrals. I'm going to send you a text. The text basically just says like, hey, I had this nice dude stop by my house, sharpen my knives. It was fast and free. Here's his number if you want your knives sharpened. And then I think it says something about like, or if you want some like high quality USA made product, something like that. And then I have the customer post it to Nextdoor, and you'd be shocked the amount of leads, the amount of text that they'll just text your number and they'll be like, hey, like saw your number on Nextdoor, like, do you sharpen Cutco? And that's so easy to set up. So that's a big way too. Now I will say on that, eventually that starts to run dry, but it took me a good like year or two of just posting or having customers post consistently, and that's really helped.
Awesome. Margaret, last question. Go ahead.
Hey Cody, how do you handle the famous question? I just need one knife. What's the price on this one knife, and how do you transition from one knife to an upgrade?
I meant to kind of talk about that earlier, actually, but I got carried away. This is a kind of a gold phrase I use, and I use this this is like one of my gold questions that I never, ever, ever skip over, or not questions, but like phrases I use. I try to do this as like an educational piece, right? So if you do it at the wrong time, I think it can come across not great. So I try to use it early in the servicing or at the booth. I try to say this like as I'm showing new, like the first couple new knives. But what I say is I'm like, Miss Jones, so knives are just like tools in the garage, right? Like you can use the back of a screwdriver to pound in a nail, and the nail's going to go in the wall. But what's going to happen is over time, you're going to damage the back of that screwdriver. And then when you need it, it's not going to work well, right? It's going to be damaged. It's going to be a mangled mess. It's the same thing in the kitchen. It's just we eat every day, so it's more important. So like you can use this knife here, the chef's knife, to cut meats, and it will work. But what's going to happen is you're going to damage it over and over and over again. And so I'll use that phrase at a service call. I use it for a new customer, and the position that I use that in is when I cut the leather with a steak knife. I cut it with the junk knife. I cut it with the Cutco knife, and then I say the reason we make sets is because different knives cut different foods differently. I insert that example, and then I cut the potato with a steak knife and a cheese knife, and they see the difference. So that takes that person that's like, well, I just need one knife for everything, to like, okay, they do work differently, right? And so anytime I see that or I hear that at the booth, the thing that I always go to is like, absolutely, same pitch with the leather, the double D edge, and then I cut the potato and I make that a sticking point. And then I'm like, yeah, you can just use one knife. It's not going to work as well. It's going to damage it, so on and so forth. And so I'll use that with a new customer on a service call at the booth. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it totally does. Thank you.
Awesome.
Last one quickly. Do you cut a lot of food at the booth, or what?
Yeah, good question.
I wouldn't say a lot, but I definitely, and there's two camps of people. I know there's a lot of people that do really, really well that like don't cut anything. I don't think I'm that good. I don't know. I have to cut something. So I always have a bag of potatoes with me everywhere I go. Every show, every service call, I carry in a bag or two potatoes with me to every service call. So yeah, every time I'm showing a customer Cutco, I'm always cutting a potato.
Awesome. Okay, let's give Cody a big thank you.